If you use a VPN to stream or download content, you're probably used to long wait times, lots of loading and buffering. Unless you use private internet access, the only VPN set up for streaming and downloading 4K content without any lag. A VPN hides your IP address, allowing you to access content not available in your region, letting you anonymize your IP address so governments and big tech can't track what you do online. And you can protect unlimited devices with just one account. Private internet access is giving my audience 83% off, which is just $203 a month, plus 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is down below. Welcome, everybody. Night one of the Democratic National Convention of 2024. Unconventional in many ways. Normally, a first-term president speaks on Thursday at the convention. Why? Because normally they are running for re-election and they are accepting their renomination on the final day of the convention. Not so this time. So sitting President Joe Biden, having stepped aside in lieu of Kamala Harris, spoke on the first night. It was fascinating to see the dynamic between President Biden and Kamala Harris, which we will get to. Truly a raucous crowd that you would typically not expect to see until nights 3 or 4, but it was only day 1. Couldn't possibly show you every speech, but we will start with some of the primetime highlights and build up through to and including President Biden's speech. If I had to say what was the biggest problem last night, it would be that they fell dramatically behind in the scheduling. The whole point of scheduling these things is to wrap up sort of right before the 11 p.m. news on the East Coast so that you can get clips of the big speeches onto the local news. President Biden didn't come out until close to 11:30 p.m. Eastern time, spoke about 50 minutes. It was well after midnight when Biden wrapped up. Other than that, and the fact that it dragged and dragged due to a number of different delays, it was very good in a lot of different ways. One of the interesting speakers, Steve Kerr, former Chicago Bulls basketball player, Golden State Warriors head coach, recent coach of the U.S. Olympic basketball team, which won gold. He said, basically, we need to replicate what the U.S. Olympic team did in the final, which is night-night for the opposition when it comes to Donald Trump.
And after the results are tallied that night, we can, in the words of the great Steph Curry, we can tell Donald Trump, night-night. Thank you.
A very good speech from just an all-around good guy, Steve Kerr. Then we got into the sort of heavy hitters of the evening. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez really going after Trump with his anti-union stances. The crowd was very engaged for AOC, and notable, of course, that at one point AOC was considered a party outsider, an upstart, an insurrectionist, colloquially, of course, not in a literal sense within the Democratic Party. And now her views have changed to some degree, but also very much welcomed as part of the mainstream of the Democratic Party.
Because we know that Donald Trump would sell this country for $1 if it meant lining his own pockets and greasing the palms of his Wall Street friends. And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots of greed, trampling on our way of life. The truth is, Don, you cannot love this country if you only fight for the wealthy and big business. To love this country is to fight for its people, all people, working people, everyday Americans like bartenders and factory workers and fast food cashiers who punch a clock and are on their feet all day in some of the toughest jobs out there.
One of the big themes of the night was support for workers, support for labor, support for unions, and AOC even turning around the often used attack against her about being a bartender, turning it right around on those who have never had to actually work.
Ever since I got elected, Republicans have attacked me by saying that I should go back to bartending. But let me tell you, I'm happy to any day of the week because there is nothing wrong with working for a living.
So a very good speech, very well received by AOC. She was followed by Hillary Clinton. Now, let me mention something about Hillary Clinton's speech. The speech was excellent, and Hillary Clinton is a very solid public speaker. There were some people on my live stream, and I hope you'll join me tonight for night 2, by the way. There were people watching my live stream who reacted by saying, oh, Hillary can't, I'm shocked she can even show her face again. Listen, Hillary was not my favorite candidate. Hillary was not even my preference in 2016 from all of the options that existed with regard to people who wanted to be the nominee, including Bernie Sanders and others. But a lot of this reflexive Hillary sucks stuff is what got us Trump in the first place, and it's why we don't currently have Roe v. Wade. So let's just consider the impact of what we say and do. But Hillary Clinton, ironically, she talked about people being criminals and the DNC crowd chanting "lock him up" about Donald Trump, which, as all of you know, I'm for law and order. So we don't lock up Trump because we want to. We lock up Trump if a judge sentences him to that. But here there is, of course, the irony of Trump having said if it were up to him, Hillary would be in prison.
As a prosecutor, Kamala locked up murderers and drug traffickers. She will never rest in defense of our freedom and safety. Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial, and when he woke up, he made his own kind of history, the first person to run for president with 34 felony convictions. As Vice President, Kamala sat in the Situation Room.
The irony and the knowing smile of Hillary Clinton, given how recently Trump was saying it is she who should be locked up. And Hillary Clinton wrapped up what was a very good speech by pointing out that there is a glass ceiling here, a woman as president of the United States, that in 2016, Hillary herself was not able to break, but there's a real shot here for Kamala Harris to be the one who breaks it.
I see the freedom to look our children in the eye and say, in America, you can go as far as your hard work and talent will take you, and mean it. And you know what? On the other side of that glass ceiling is Kamala Harris raising her hand and taking the oath of office as our 47th President of the United States. Because, my friends, when a barrier falls for one of us, it falls. It falls and clears the way for all of us. So for the next 78 days, we need to work harder than we ever have. We need to beat back the dangers that Trump and his allies pose to the rule of law and our way of life. Don't get distracted or complacent. Talk to your friends and neighbors. Volunteer. Be proud champions for the truth and for the country that we all love. I want my grandchildren grandchildren and their grandchildren to know I was here at this moment, that we were here, and that we were with Kamala Harris every step of the way. This is our time, America. This is when we stand up. This is when we break through. The future is here. It's in our grasp. Let's go with it.
All right, so a really arousing speech by Hillary Clinton showing seemingly no bitterness whatsoever that it will not be she who breaks that glass ceiling, but it very well may be Kamala Harris. And then we continued building towards Joe Biden. Friend of the show, Jamie Raskin, spoke, and he said a lot of interesting things, including sort of comically, a reminder to J.D. Vance of why the running mate to Trump was an open position to begin with.
Hey, J.D. Vance, do you understand why there was a sudden job opening for running mate on the GOP ticket? They tried to kill your predecessor.
Jamie Raskin, very good at this, also followed up by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who did a really good job of drawing a palpable distinction between Trump and Harris.
America, looking at the two choices before you, who would you hire? Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Kamala Harris has a resume. Donald Trump has a rap sheet.
And of course, those are only some of the differences between the two of them. And then we got into President Biden's speech. Biden was introduced by his daughter, Ashley Biden, to a 4-minute standing ovation.
And now, I would like to introduce my father, your 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
All right. And by the way, a father relating normally to his daughter, very much unlike any imagery we would see at the Republican National Convention. I won't play the full 4-minute standing ovation. It's people cheering for 4 minutes. And then Joe Biden spoke, and Joe Biden addressed his age. Joe Biden made it clear that he made the decision he made because what's most important to him is what happens in this country, and it's not about him. It's an incredible concept that is not present on the other side of the aisle at this stage of the game. And Biden's speech was quite good. I would argue one of the best speeches of his presidency, and it felt like a farewell speech in many senses.
Brought us to this day. What shall our legacy be? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through, America, America, I gave my best to you. I made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I gave my best to you. For 50 years, like many of you, I've given my heart and soul to our nation. And I've been blessed a million times in return with the support of the American people. I've either been too young to be in the Senate because I wasn't 30 yet, and too old to stay as president. But I hope you know how grateful I am to all of you I can honestly say, and I mean this from the bottom, give you my word as a Biden, I can honestly say I'm more optimistic about the future than I was when I was elected as a 29-year-old United States Senator. I mean it.
The speech was criticized by some for being too much about Joe Biden and not enough about Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I think it's a fair criticism, although it is only night one. The case for Harris and Walz is sort of being built night after night. But Joe Biden did a very good job of explaining his motivations for what he did as president and his motivations now for stepping aside.
And all this talk about how I'm angry at all those people who said I should step down, that's not true. I love my country more, and we need to preserve our democracy. In 2024, we need you to vote. We need you to keep the Senate. We need you to win back the House of Representatives. And above all, we need you to beat Donald Trump. And elect Kamala and Tim.
Making a very good case for Harris and Walz. Biden also alluding to his age a number of times in ways that were really pretty appropriate given the totality of the situation.
Donald Trump calls America a failing nation. No, I'm serious. But think about this. Think about this. He publicly says to the whole world, I'm going to say something outrageous. I know more foreign leaders by their first names and know them well than anybody alive. Just because I'm so damn old. But I'm not.
And then continuing as the speech went to talk about how the best decision he made as far as his presidency was selecting Kamala Harris as VP, and that the country would do well to select her now as president.
Selecting Kamala was the very first decision I made when I became our nominee. And it was the best decision I made my whole career. We've not only gotten to know each other, we've become close friends. She's tough, she's experienced, and she has enormous integrity, enormous integrity. Her story represents the best American story. And like many of our best presidents, she was also vice president. That's a joke.
And then, of course, also alluding to the very, very real threat of electing someone like Trump who will play coy and be pen pals with dictators and authoritarians, and drawing a contrast there to Kamala Harris as well.
But guess who doesn't get it and doesn't respect our veterans? We know from his own chief of staff, the four-star General John Kelly, that Trump, when in Europe, would not go to the grave sites in France. The brave service members who gave their lives to this country. He called them suckers and losers. Who in the hell does he think he is? Who does he think he is? There's no words for a person. They're not the words of a person not worthy of being commander-in-chief. Period. Not then, not now, and not ever. I mean that. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Just as no commander-in-chief should ever bow down to a dictator, the way Trump bows down to Putin. I never have, and I promise you, Kamala Harris will never do it. Will never bow.
And then finally, a very, very different end to Joe Biden's speech than what we saw at every recent Trump event. Not a dystopian, apocalyptic vision.
Than I was when I was elected as a 29-year-old United States Senator. I mean it. Folks, We just have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing we cannot do when we do it together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
All right, and a very interesting moment. On the one hand, Donald Trump and his supporters tried to have Trump's VP killed. Here is Kamala Harris embracing Joe Biden, and some very amateur lip reading suggests that she says, "I love you so much." A very, very different situation than what we see over on that depraved other side. So one of the most interesting and probably impactful day ones of any convention, that's what happened at the DNC in Chicago. Meanwhile, as a story of contrasts, Trump's reaction was to go to Truth Social and post the following as Biden was speaking, quote, "Comrade Kamala Harris has just informed us that she will not do the Fox News debate on September 4. I am not surprised by this development because I feel that she knows it is very difficult at best for her to defend her record-setting flip-flopping on absolutely everything she once believed in, including her statements that there will be no fracking in Pennsylvania and her horrible performance on the border, our borders are, where millions of criminals and people from mental institutions and terrorists have been allowed to pour into our country totally unchecked and unvetted. It's called, and she loves it, an open border. Rather than the debate on September 4, I have agreed to do a teletown hall anchored by Sean Hannity for Fox in Pennsylvania." What a contrast. And then finally, the Democrats accidentally put forward the Biden platform. His name is mentioned 21 times, and yet they threw him out of office. It was a vicious coup, such a foolish thing to miss, but the fake news media refuses to cover it. If I had made such a mistake, it would be the biggest story in America. Screaming into the void is Trump as the country moves beyond him and sees the alternative vision presented on day one at the DNC. Tonight, Michelle Obama, J.B. Pritzker, Doug Emhoff, and others. I hope you'll join me live at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter. And make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/The David Pakman Show. Quick break and more after this. You watch YouTube, you listen to podcasts, you've heard a ton of ads for VPNs, but all VPNs are pretty much the same, except for one. Our sponsor, Private Internet Access, is the only VPN that can confirm your internet activity is not being logged. Their software is fully open source, so you can see that traffic isn't being logged. Their systems are also independently audited by the Big Four accounting firm Deloitte to confirm nothing is being logged, and they've demonstrated multiple times in court they have no record of user activity. Everyone should use a VPN when they connect to the internet. Hides your IP address so governments and big tech can't track you, and you can access Netflix and Hulu content not normally available in your home country. Private Internet Access has servers in 91 different countries and all 50 US states. You can protect all of your devices with just a single account. And Private Internet Access is giving my audience 83% off. Comes out to just $203 a month plus 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is in the description. The David Pakman Show is an audience-supported program. Help us do what we do by signing up at joinpakman.com. I can't think of a more critical time to support independent media, and I would love it if you signed up. We offer great perks to our members, including an extra show every day called The Bonus Show, commercial-free audio and video streams of the show, the soundboard, and invitations to members-only town hall events. You can use the coupon code this week only, DNC Not Weird. For all of the weird stuff we see from Trump and Vance, It was just a very normal day one of the DNC. And so you can use the code, no spaces, okay? DNC not weird to get a 60% discount at joinpacman.com. Donald Trump is rightly terrified about Kamala Harris's likely night 4 DNC ratings for her speech accepting the Democratic nomination. Rolling Stone reports Trump is worried about the TV ratings for Harris's DNC speech. The former president has been telling allies his convention's TV ratings were tremendous and won't be topped by Harris this week. I have a different opinion. I think that Kamala Harris's ratings will surpass Donald Trump's. Now, I want to make it super clear. There's no political analysis here. I'm not suggesting that Kamala Harris's speech having higher ratings than Trump means that she's going to win. All this is about is a predictable outcome because of a deeply insecure Trump and general interest in what Kamala Harris is going to say. 2 parts to this. First of all, if I were a betting man, I would bet that Kamala Harris's ratings absolutely crush Trump's ratings when she accepts the nomination on Thursday, assuming that the DNC can keep the schedule on track and get her on stage before everybody goes to bed. The reason for this is not necessarily because Kamala Harris is going to win, although she might, and the polls are pointing in that direction. The reason I expect her ratings to be absolutely huge is that Trump has been a known entity for years. He gave the same damn stupid speech at the RNC that he's been giving for a really long time. The dark dystopian vision, I'm a victim, I'm a martyr, everybody else is treating me so unfairly. And there was very little about that piqued any kind of curiosity. People like us watched it because we follow this stuff. The hardcore MAGA base watched it, I guess, because it's their cult leader. But when it comes to Kamala Harris, not only is enthusiasm from those who do plan to vote for her as high as it has ever been right now, we can see it through donations, we can see it through polling, we can see it through attendance at rallies. So everybody who plans to vote Kamala is going to be voting. There is a large swath of folks who are curious about Kamala. And they will be watching, not necessarily because they've decided they're going to vote for her. Some maybe aren't sure. Some maybe aren't going to vote for her, but they're still curious because they want to see, hey, are all these attacks coming from the right accurate? And so I do expect that as far as the ratings go, Kamala Harris will crush Trump on Thursday. We will see. But there's another aspect to this, which is the deeply insecure Trump, who is not a leader. When you watched day one of the DNC and you heard from AOC and Jamie Raskin and Jasmine Crockett and President Biden himself and Jill Biden and everybody else, Hillary Clinton, we are seeing people who are leaders in different ways. They're not all the top leader of the country the way a president becomes, but they are leaders. And when you see these petty insecurities about, how are my ratings going to do versus Kamala's, it's reasonable and logical and probably common sense to say, aside from what I think Trump or Harris should do on tax policy, like, okay, there's policy. This is just not how a leader behaves. A leader is not this triggerable so easily the way Donald Trump is. So for a lot of different reasons, both because of what it would mean for the likely outcome in November, but also because we've really got to communicate to Trump that he's out. Something else is coming in. You're being replaced. I do hope that Kamala Harris's speech on Thursday absolutely blows Trump's ratings out of the water. A completely disgusting George Santos was filmed sobbing after pleading guilty to multiple crimes, wearing, for some reason that, of course, we continue to struggle to understand, a pin with what appears to be a Star of David. He has long lied about being Jewish. We have no evidence that he is Jewish, but he keeps playing this up. He did indeed plead guilty to a whole bunch of crimes related to his campaign and unrelated to his campaign. He is facing a 6 to 8 year prison sentence. And here is, I'm not going to call him a regretful George Santos. I will let you decide. What is he really sorry about here?
I'm taking responsibility because I have to. There's no other way around it. To my family, friends, and supporters, and the people of New York's 3rd Congressional District, I offer my deepest apologies. It has been the proudest achievement of my life to represent you, and I believe I did so to the best of my abilities. but you also trusted me to represent you with honor and to uphold the values that are essential to our democracy.
Which
and
he
in
did.
that regard, I failed you.
Yes.
I know that my actions have caused disappointment, frustration, and a loss of faith in me, and for that, I'm truly sorry.
I'm sorry you no longer like me.
Want to acknowledge the many people who have stood by me during this difficult time, my family, friends, and legal team. Your support has been a source of strength, and I am determined to repay your faith in me by becoming a better person.
Wow.
Moving forward, I am dedicated to making amends for the wrongs I have committed. I understand that there are legal consequences for my actions, and I accept them fully. This plea is not just an admission of guilt. It's an acknowledgement that I need to be held accountable like any other American that breaks the law. I hope that by facing these consequences head on, I can begin to demonstrate my commitment to change and to earning your forgiveness. I do not ask for forgiveness, as I know that must be earned through actions, not words. I want to be a part of restoring the integrity that I helped diminish, and I will work tirelessly to regain the trust of those I have let down.
You can tell that George is really, really, really sorry that he got caught and that now that was the equivalent of I'm sorry if anyone was offended. It is the now we move on to sentencing. Santos pleaded guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft as part of the plea deal. The judge has said the plea deal may come with an estimated sentencing range between 6 and 8 years in prison. Sentencing is currently scheduled for February 7th. He will have to pay at least $373,000 and potentially face other fines and penalties. You know, when this entire thing started, there was this feeling that the right place for this guy is not the House of Representatives. It's some kind of correctional institution. It just, everything about him reeked that. The scams dating back to his time in Brazil and so many other things. And we hopefully, we don't know for sure, but we hopefully will see George Santos end up where he deserves to be, which is in a prison cell, not in an office on Capitol Hill. We'll leave it there, take a break, and be back with so much more right after this. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. It's great to welcome back to the program Steve Schmidt, renowned American political strategist, commentator, founder of The Warning, a popular newsletter, podcast, and YouTube channel. Steve, it's so great to have you on again, and it's really a perfect time for it now in the middle of the DNC. You know, there was so much of this demand, seemingly, from some Trump supporters that Biden must drop out. He can't possibly do this, and it's just not fair. And then he steps aside, and it seems as though they were completely unprepared to actually run against Kamala Harris now, as most of the attack lines have been flailing personal attacks. How do you see it? Were they actually prepared to run against someone other than Joe Biden?
Obviously not. There's an old saying in the Marine Corps, proper planning prevents piss poor performance. And the Trump campaign didn't get the memo. And part of the reason is a lack of imagination. There are lots of things that explain why we are where we are as a country, because people who should have been able to see what was coming down the railroad tracks weren't able to. Sometimes that's from a lack of imagination. So it never crossed the Trump mind. It's an impossibility that Trump would ever do what Biden did, which was to subordinate his ambition, which, let's face it, is substantial. You don't become the president of the United States without substantial ambition, ego, grit, determination, all of these things in your character. And Joe Biden gave it up. He made an assessment. I think it could have happened sooner, less publicly, in a less ugly manner than it went down. But in the end, I think what you see last night is a genuine affection for the guy, for the man. And he is profoundly different than Trump. And when he did something, not only that they weren't prepared for, but they couldn't conceive of, they were caught as flat-footed as you could be. And the other thing about it is, people say, hey, we're surprised by this. No one should be surprised if you can read a poll, because what the polls said, all of them, is the American people don't want this. They were screaming it. You had high watermarks of 80% of the country saying don't want it. And so the second they got the thing that they wanted, which was not what the two parties were offering, and that the leadership of the two parties were offering, and they stepped off that spring, it shot Kamala Harris up like a rocket ship, because the demand for change out of this era is so intense. And it's
I'm curious, Steve, your thought on, we spoke to Tim Miller last week, and he had a long list of criticisms of how Trump has been going after Kamala Harris. I'm curious, what do you think is the most effective approach for Kamala Harris to go after Trump, in the sense of, one of the most memorable lines last night at the DNC maybe was UAW's Sean Fain talking about Trump as a scab. Jasmine Crockett talked about how he has a rap sheet instead of a resume. And what approach would you take in terms of the best ways to get new voters on your side for going after Trump at this stage of the campaign?
Well, let's take that question apart into a couple different components. There's a fundamental strategic construct in this race that tells you who's winning and who's losing at any given moment. Whomever the race is about is losing, right? So the race was about Donald Trump all the way through 2016 until James Comey's intervention makes it about Secretary Clinton, and she loses very narrowly. 2020, the race was about Trump. It was about his incompetence. It was about his incapacity. It was about his chaos, and he lost. The race had become about Biden, who literally had to withdraw from it. Kamala Harris has made the race about Trump again. And the way you engage Trump is by laughter, by humiliation. You have to treat Trump and meet Trump really like you do with all people where they are. And Trump's a bully. And so that bully cannot be accommodated. That bully has to be constantly confronted. And the truth of the matter is, when you're talking about the people wearing the bandages on their ear, when you're talking about the people walking around with the J.D. Vance sperm cup, right, for family planning, it's weird. It's weird. And it's been weird for a long time. There is a Star Wars creature cantina of weirdos around Donald Trump on the Mar-a-Lago porch that are spectacularly unfit by every conceivable measurement that we used as a society to weed out who should be in charge of life and death matters and situations, until very recently, that have a demand for political power. And so what the Democrats with Harris have done is make a subtle change. Democracy doesn't mean a lot to 40% of the country that has $400 cash available for an emergency. The 27-year-old black woman who is handcuffed, put into a police car and charged with desecration of a corpse because she had a miscarriage in Ohio. I'm not sure that democracy is something that she really appreciates, but freedom is. The American Revolution wasn't fought over democracy. It was fought over liberty. It was fought over freedom. It was fought over control. Hey, you can't cut down these pine trees because they belong to the king, and the king gets all the best trees. Or 100 and other different examples. And what you see the Harris Democratic Party doing is framing the race around an issue that everyone in the country gets at an intuitive level. Because if there's any national character, it's deeply based in don't tell me what to fucking do, right? And we are all at some level descendants of people that at their first moment of opportunity, whether it was upon arrival in the country or upon emancipation within the country, or at the end of the Great Migration from the apartheid states in the American South, as soon as Americans are able, all Americans who have come from somewhere, someplace where someone imposed on them what they should think, what they should believe, what they should read, what they can't read, what they can see, what they can't see. The allure of America is freedom. And it's an easy concept to understand. And Kamala Harris has made that switch on the tracks very, very seamlessly, with great subtlety, but great impact. And I thought the framing of all of this, particularly Secretary Clinton, for the first time in a long time, offering a vision into the future of where we ought to be headed and going. So her speech last night, with all respect to the president, is the one going to be remembered as the historic speech.
When you look at the possibility of November as an inflection point with regard to MAGA's role in the Republican Party, would you assess this as, if Trump loses, that's definitely the end of Trump's political ambitions and maybe even of MAGA, versus if Trump wins, we now may be looking at a MAGA mold candidate in 2028? Like, are the stakes that high?
I think that we have several hurdles between election and inauguration that you can't take for granted. And the first thing that's going to happen, unless it is a landslide election, and we haven't had a legitimate landslide in the country since '96, it's been a long time. Any close election, Trump will dispute, and there will be tens and scores of tens of millions of Americans who will fall for the lie. And there will be scores of companies making billions in profit who will push it like they have in the past. And there will be foreign governments creating all sorts of social media chaos. So what happens? The first thing you appreciate about Trump, if you just assess this by the numbers, you take out all the emotion, all the nonsense. I mean, Trump has been a disaster electorally for Republicans. Yet, he's one of three people who are not FDR who were nominated by their party 3 times. William Jennings Bryan, Henry Clay, and Donald Trump. If they lose, who is the person that will challenge Donald Trump for the throne? Will there be anybody?
You mean now for 2028, Steve?
2028. If Donald Trump says, I want it, he controls the party. So I don't know that Donald Trump isn't the nominee in 4 years.
Wow.
Because there has to be an intercessory event, right? There has to be an intercession. Is it Nikki Haley who steps forward and said, I tried to tell you so? Does Chris Christie have the possibility of affinity? Who is the Bill Clinton of the Republican Party at that moment who wasn't part of this, who isn't indicted by their cynicism, who doesn't have it stamped on their forehead, right? Who can credibly say, hey, let's move on. Who is that person? And
so are you saying, Steve, that you think
it's
a plausible scenario if Trump loses, that he'll say at 82 or 83, I want to be the nominee again for a presidential term, at the end of which he would be 87 or 88 or however old he would be? You think that's a possibility?
I think that one of the realities of a political campaign, right? A political party. Political parties exist in two states. They're expanding or they're retracting.
Yes.
And the MAGA party is a retracting, not an expanding party.
I agree.
There's a physics to this. And the physics is when a political party gets smaller, it gets hotter, it gets denser, and more extreme, like a collapsing star, until it collapses into itself in a black hole. There are markers for any party that has an authoritarian bent. And one of them is an intolerance for dissent expressed by the purge. So the MAGA party is very explicit. You're with us. The old Ronald Reagan formulation was, somebody is with me 80% of the time and against me 20% of the time. It's not my political opponent. They're my strong ally. But the proposition with MAGA on the table is obedience. And the obedience is a requirement that if Trump says that's an AI-generated crowd, it must be an AI-generated crowd. If I lost the election, I lost the election, right? And so the use of authority, power, to define what is true, and a requirement for membership, really, that all you have to do, right, to be a MAGA in good standing is to submit your agency and the sovereignty, that if Trump asserts through Sean Spicer that the picture you're looking at that shows the bigger crowd, it's just like Winston in 1984, right? If they say it's smaller, even if your eyes assert it's bigger, it's smaller. And that's always been a hallmark of Trumpism, right?
Well, it's a very cult-like trait that you don't necessarily have to believe it, but you have to say you believe it.
They're all authoritarian structures impose a gravity where, what am I allowed to think? What can I say? What's the boundary? And so I grew up in New Jersey. Donald Trump has been ever present culturally around me in my life, on the news, Art of the Deal, the book, since I was 11 or 12 years old. The fact that he became president and people think that he is a successful businessman has always astonished me. Yet, for 9 years, you watch this after the insurrection, the rehabilitation by Kevin McCarthy, the wholesale declarations of no more Trump, then complete fidelity to Trump. So if you haven't crossed the magic whatever line with regard to no more, I'm skeptical that another loss, though it would seem obvious, would traverse that line. Does it? If he still wants it? Because he controls the party apparatus lock, stock, and barrel. He has the capacity to raise money. And there's nobody that I see within the party who's tough enough to go toe to toe with him and to call him out as he deserves to be called out.
Steve, last thing I want to ask you about, in the 70-something days between now and the election, short of a candidate, dying or becoming incapacitated, what are the sorts of things that could really impact polling and the race? We have one or more debates coming. Conventional wisdom is the debates don't matter. The June 27th debate certainly seemed to change the dynamics of the campaign. What sorts of events, what sorts of things could really shake the dynamics up of this campaign?
It's like one of the funny things, having been involved in politics, through a couple of presidential campaigns, we won one at the, lost one, the years at NBC covering them. People say things and you repeat them, and conventional wisdom gets formed, including like really dumb things like the debate don't matter.
Right.
Even after the aftermath of a debate that historically changed the entire trajectory of the election. So this debate will be the most watched political event, bar none, in American history. Fall debates have Super Bowl size audiences, and this is going to be up there and then some. This will be the most watched. And she is smarter than Donald Trump. She is tough. And he's going to have his hands full in that debate. When we look at the election and we look at the ballot initiatives where abortion is on the ballot.
Yep.
And you look at, and one of the blind spots of Democrats was, hey, young people are with us. We're with Biden. And I'm talking to my kids, and my kids are showing me what's on on TikTok. And brutal. And it doesn't look like that anymore. It's brutal for Trump. So no one has a handle right now on what the electorate is going to be. We're in a kinetic moment, have been for a month. She's going to come out of this with a real head of steam, whatever the bounce may be, right? Let's call it 8 points. Let's say she comes out of this up 9. And you can see polls where she will have a lead that big. But that will fall back by half within 2 weeks. And there will be a deceleration that's a natural part of the rhythm right through this Labor Day weekend, and then kind of a stasis in the race until the debate. And within that debate, you have millions of people who have a first impression of Kamala Harris that is essentially, I like Kamala Harris. I like what I see. I didn't know her. Whatever my impression of her was, her performance is clearly different. If what you knew about Kamala Harris was that she wasn't very good at the political part of being vice president, she seems like really good at politics to me, right? And to most people that are out there. So what does she believe philosophically? How does she see life? How did she end up here? What is her vision to lead the world? So when you look at her speech, I've said for months that I've hoped that they've read many, many times Peggy Noonan's great speech written for George Herbert Walker Bush in 41. And Peggy Noonan just talked about this in the Wall Street Journal. That's one of the best convention speeches ever written. And Kamala Harris needs a speech like that. You had George Bush, who was 19 years old, was the youngest fighter pilot in the U.S. Navy. Time magazine puts him on the cover. It says the wimp factor. I mean, imagine that. You were literally, when you were 19, right? You're a naval combat fighter pilot, the youngest in the Navy, shot down in constant combat. You're to be lambasted as a wimp. And that's the perception of you. So she has a blank slate. You have this energy in the country. The people desperately want to move on from all of this. Can she handle a dangerous world? And this speech and the debate are all part of the testing grounds. And then there will be events that transpire in the fall that will shape the outcome of this election that have not yet happened. And so the idea that President Biden is off the stage, he's the commander-in-chief. He's not off the stage. There is a tremendous amount of swirling dynamics, and all of it is overshadowed by a guy after already doing it. So it's not speculative anymore about, I can't lose the election. So once again, when he does it, tell me who's the group of people, because Liz Cheney and Adam Kitzinger aren't around anymore, who are going to stand up and be like, not this time. Lindsey Graham's going to do that? Who's going to do that? And so his hold over the party, I don't think slips away on election night. I think there's a pain involved in this that is very, very deep. And it's going to take a long time for there really to be a reckoning around the cynicism. And the Democrats, and I should say this, Democrats, when they insisted, some Democrats in the weeks after the debate, and there's a big difference between the parties, that, hey, no issue here. That was the great danger of that argument. They become them because they have gaslit the country for 9 years. And when it all goes down and the ship's not there, so to speak, on the water, and everyone's in it, trying to scramble into a lifeboat to harness their careers, we'll see. And remember, Kamala Harris gets elected, likely to be a solid Republican year and 2 years in that midterm election. So what does that look like? Is it a manifestation of extreme craziness, right? That just propels forward like a scene in Braveheart, right? Or, right? Is it something that starts to be more thoughtful, more intellectualized again, and that resembles the hallmarks of the loyal opposition? I want to say one last thing. As much as people think, and think correctly, that this will be an ugly campaign, I don't think they have any idea. We're about to see 76 days of racial malice, innuendos, venom, and ugliness play out that worsens and gets cheaper and more disgusting and dirtier every day as MAGA continues to have downward pressure on it. And you see Donald Trump's disorientation around how to hit her manifesting itself in the severity and really the obvious innuendos of the remarks. And it will be a terrible fall in that regard.
I think that seems increasingly clear. Yeah. Steve Schmidt, American political strategist, commentator, founder of The Warning. Steve, always great speaking to you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Dave.
If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind the scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free Daily Show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. All right, not long before the primetime speeches started at the Democratic National Convention yesterday, failed former President Donald Trump, seemingly sedated, gave a speech about economic policy, which is just like, it's already funny because it's like, of course he didn't. There's no possible way that that's actually what he did. Trump spoke in York, Pennsylvania, and it was supposed to be a speech about economic policy. The people standing behind him seemed disturbed to even be there. They seemed bored out of their minds. Fox News eventually even cut away because this got so crazy. But listen to sedated Trump and how it's almost difficult to even parse what he's saying because of the delivery.
Back to a similar, because they were getting just absolutely destroyed by the numbers that was going up. And you can bet that if we don't win, she takes over, your energy numbers will be triple and quadruple, and you won't be producing a drop of oil. They ended the largest oil reserve anywhere in the world, probably as large as Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has this massive amount of oil. It's called Anwar in Alaska. They ended it on close to day one. They ended it.
Yeah. He can barely stay awake. You know, forget about putting other people to sleep. He can basically even stay awake. And of course, he's lying about all these things. We've had record oil and gas exports under Biden. We are, by Trump's own definition, more energy independent today than ever before. But the people behind him can barely stay awake. Now, at one point, Trump glitched so badly that he almost sounds like he eats a word. Now, you might say, what is it? Dave, what do you mean he ate a word? What does that even mean? I'm going to play it for you. It sounds like he eats a word.
Kamala is also on a regulatory
regulatory. He just swallowed it. He swallows regulatory. It's a very strange moment.
Kamala is also on a regulatory jihad.
Yeah, a regulatory jihad. So anyway, that one he just swallowed. And yep, he ate it. Trump then brings up electronics, but he literally says we're going to bring up electronics. I don't mean that he raises it as an issue and then explains some kind of important thing related to electronics. He just says we're going to be bringing up electronics. Wow.
We're going to bring up electronics, too. Yeah. Electronics, we buy everything away. When you see the sophistication of the product I just saw at this place, electronics is peanuts by comparison.
We're going to bring up electronics too. Imagine if I did a show like this. Welcome to the show, everybody. We're going to bring up electronics too. Electronics. We buy everything away. When you see the sophistication of the product I just saw at this place, electronics is peanuts by comparison. I don't think I'd have an audience. And I think what's happening is the audience that Trump has behind him is trying to get away. It's unclear whether they're able to, but certainly some, what the hell am I doing here? Here's another moment where Trump is just, you know, trying to read his speech off of the teleprompter. No inflection, no energy. The woman over Trump's right shoulder sort of seems like she may be looking for the exit.
With your vote, we will unleash explosive economic growth and vast new prosperity for all of our citizens. We will put more money into your pockets and create millions and millions of new jobs. We're going to do it like nobody else has ever been able to do it.
And you can tell that he really means it, and the people behind him really know he means it as well. Trump continued ranting, and if you're watching, keep an eye on the folks standing behind him who just look increasingly uncomfortable.
I'm announcing today that when I return to the White House, I will end the anti-American energy crusade and terminate Kamala's so-called power plant rule. It's a disaster for our country. Wow. Our country will have no jobs by the time these communists and Marxists get rid of, when they destroy the country, probably can never come back either, just so you understand.
Yeah. Of course, there are no communists or Marxists that we've been able to identify.
Too much competition from other countries that are doing it right. We have a lot of competition out there. Not only China, we have a lot of other competition.
Okay, and so the folks behind Trump sort of like, why is he here and what is this speech about? Trump also adding now to, if you say to him, there's sort of like this free association that happens. One of those associations is if you tell Trump you're supposed to talk about the economy, he will bring up cryptocurrency. The only problem is he doesn't know anything about cryptocurrency, and he vaguely refers to it as a very big subject. Again, one of the ways he has no clue what he's talking about is he'll just evaluate the size of it as a subject of discussion without saying anything meaningful about it.
The electricity demands of AI and cryptocurrencies, which is a very big subject. It's coming up more and more, and we have to stay at the top. We want to be right at the forefront. Otherwise, China and other countries will take it over. That's both of them, AI and crypto.
There you go. And really something that Trump's understanding of crypto is really going to strike fear into the Chinese. That I can assure you. And Fox News ultimately cut away. This was just too boring, too depraved, too vapid for even Fox News to continue covering.
All of a sudden, she comes out and she says the same thing, exactly the same words that I used.
Okay, former President Trump in York, Pennsylvania, keeping an eye on that speech on the economy.
Yeah, I love how she's going to say it's a speech on the economy. It's just his normal grievances with no real economic policy laid out other than attacking other people and calling them communists and Marxists. So a sedated Trump on what was probably a pretty tough day for him, given all of the attention with the DNC that will build tonight into night 2 and nights 3 and ultimately night 4. A very sad seeming Trump. He did grant an interview at this event, which I want to briefly talk about. Trump gave, quote, a speech about, quote, the economy. And the reason I'm using quotes is it wasn't a speech, but rather some low energy teleprompter confusion. And it wasn't about the economy beyond the fact that Trump mentioned the word crypto and the word oil. But beyond that, it's hard to say it was really about the economy. So CBS was at Trump's economic event that went haywire. Reporter asks a very good question. If you lose this election, will it have been legitimate? Or is it that by definition, if you lose, it was an illegitimate election? And Trump goes, I'm a very honorable person.
If you lose this election, will it have been legitimate?
If I see that we had a fair and free election, which I hope to be able to say, but if I see that, you will never see anybody more honorable than me. I'm an honorable person. You see the report that came out on Biden today from Congress with all of the money that was stolen.
But you didn't accept the results of the last election.
Well, that's right, because there were many problems with the last election. You know it.
Even though all of the legal cases were dropped.
No, they weren't brought because the judges wouldn't take them because they said it was after the election. Well, how else?
That's a complete and total lie, by the way.
You're going to find out cheating until after the election. I think things have been done over the last 4-year period that will make this a free and fair election. And certainly, if for some reason I lose, and I think if I lose, this country will go into a tailspin, the likes of which it's never seen before, the likes of 1929.
Right. It'll be the same tailspin that Trump was anticipating if Biden won, which never happened. You know, when you have to clarify, no one is more honorable than me. You will never see anyone more honorable than me, Trump said. Your honor is definitely a question mark. That's something that we have learned very much so. Trump still kind of confused, interestingly, as to how to play the overturning of Roe v. Wade, because on the one hand, it is something he achieved by selecting the 3 Supreme Court justices that he selected. At the same time, Republicans have lost so much ever since that decision was made by the Supreme Court. So here's how Trump plays it by saying everybody wanted Roe v. Wade overturned.
You were influential in picking 3 Supreme Court justices to overturn Roe v. Wade. Do you have any regrets about the overturning of Roe v. Wade?
Well, they've wanted to overturn it for 52 years. For 52 years, they've worked to overturn Roe v. Wade. They wanted to bring it back to the states. All legal scholars, all Democrats, everybody wanted to bring it back. This is for years and decades and decades.
Now, it is very much untrue that everyone wanted to overturn Roe v. Wade. In fact, as is often the case with Trump, the truth is the exact opposite. There was more support for Roe v. Wade. And when we say Roe v. Wade, what we mean is abortion being legal in most cases. There was more support for Roe v. Wade at its time of being overturned than at any time in the Roe v. Wade era. And so unsure, I guess, how to manage the fact that there is national disgust from men and women alike about what happened with Roe v. Wade. Trump is resorting to, everyone wanted it overturned, and I did it. That has not worked for Republicans so far. It has not worked in any abortion-related referendum. And the hope is that it also will not work in November. We've got a great bonus show for you today. The Biden impeachment inquiry has ended with no impeachment forthcoming. Second, Kamala Harris wants to raise the corporate tax rate to 28. Republicans are saying it's crazy, yet it is still lower than other tax rates that they found acceptable. And thirdly, shares of the Trump Media and Technology Group continue to dump into the toilet as the stock market is overall doing fine. Shares of Trump's company, absolutely disastrous. Many have lost their life savings after making a cult investment in a company with essentially no revenue. All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. I've been notified we are up to 931 pre-orders for my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, getting very close to 1,000. I put a lot of work into this book. I would love for you to read it, and you can pre-order it now and secure a whole bunch of other pre-order extras, including a signed book plate. You can do it at davidpakman.com/echo or on any ebook, physical book, or audiobook platform that you prefer. It is called The Echo Machine. If you search my name and The Echo Machine, it'll come up. Let me know about your pre-orders, info@davidpakman.com. I'll see you on the bonus show, and I hope you'll join me tonight for streaming night 2 of the Democratic National Convention. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. If you use a VPN to stream or download content, you're probably used to long wait times, lots of loading and buffering. Unless you use private internet access, the only VPN set up for streaming and downloading 4K content without any lag. A VPN hides your IP address, allowing you to access content not available in your region, letting you anonymize your IP address so governments and big tech can't track what you do online. And you can protect unlimited devices with just one account. Private internet access is giving my audience 83% off, which is just $203 a month, plus 4 extra months for free. Go to piavpn.com/DavidP. The link is down below.